Well, good morning. This is Ron Burgess with Micro Giants, and this morning we're going to talk a little bit about very, very small businesses and the marketing and how they go about marketing. And we're going to have and do have a really great panel today. Some of our regulars. We've got Edgar Martin with us, who is set up in one of his clients. He specializes in doing some restaurant information and marketing. John Beal, J.P. Beal, who has a very strong finance background, but he also has started his own small business uh, by that uses farm products, local farm products, in order to build various kinds of products as a way to help support local farmers in Southern California stay in business and maybe find new markets. And then, of course, John Mills, who is a sort of a serial entrepreneur like I am. He's had electronics businesses, done a lot of consulting over the years, and is currently has a building which he has split up into small offices for about 170 companies, something like that. Not that many. Okay, maybe a few less. 70. Was it 70?
We're 50 plus.
50 plus. Okay. So a lot of offices for rent where he provides all kinds of technical services as well. So this is a strong group with a lot of small business background. So let's get started, and then we'll bring these guys in and have them add their expert comments. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this up right now. Okay, so this is really marketing for the tiny company. The tiny company is really defined as one person, maybe up to 3, 4, maybe 5 people. Depends on the kind of company it is and what you're really doing. But certainly when you're very, very small, you have, maybe enough money to make a living, maybe enough money to pay 1 or 2 people, 3 people, but it doesn't really usually provide a lot of information, a lot of extra money to be able to hire marketing people. And so you're really left to doing it completely yourself. And while you may be able to get help from various resources, it's still up to the small business person to do it. So I thought I would go through just a brief outline of some of the points that are going to be a little bit different than what you see or read about larger companies. First of all, and two basic principles. Firstly, you need to make a careful study of your existing and future customers. Now, we've explored customers many times on our Micro Giants channel, so you can go there to see more detail about it. But this is basically the idea that you probably don't really understand your customers as well as you think you do. And if you don't understand your customers and who they are, and demographics and psychographics, it's awfully difficult to figure out how to do marketing. Along the same note, you have to properly understand their communication receptors. In other words, what do they pay attention to? They may not pay attention to it, but what are they exposed to? How do they communicate? What are their preferences in terms of communication? If you can kind of figure that out, then at least you know how to and where to direct your brand. And again, there's a lot more to that subject that we can, illustrate in a little bit more detail in our conversations. And also, just reminding you, we have a lot more about that on our channel. And then finally, flawless delivery of image. There are some very, very small companies that do a pretty good job of this simply because it might be their company. There's a sort of or their personality in which is the company. There's a very well-known person here in our local town who has a day spa. and she has been become notorious in carrying her cards around and giving every man a discount in the form of a business card. And that's how she built her business. And she built it into something that was really quite remarkable, and to the point to where she was able to sell it to someone else, and that business is being carried on. I think she'd been there for 20, 30 years. But it's really, name recognition, a consistent image. It wasn't a fabulous image, wasn't really done by professionals. And then, of course, actually executing her actual business, which she had done in a cute little house, close to downtown. So, that's all is necessary in order to get some businesses going. It's not true with all kinds of businesses, but certainly. So those are the basic concepts of principle one. Principle two is to understand really what is this marketing animal anyway. And the point here is marketing is not a department. A lot of people think that if marketing is a department, you can hire somebody to go out and do it. In the end, I just have heard over and over, and I'm sure you guys have too, that, gee, who do you know that I could hire to go out and do the selling for me, or grow my business? Well, if you're really, really small, you can't afford those kind of people, because they may be needing more money than your salary is in order to be able to do the job, because it's just that complicated. It's marketing needs to be thought of not of a department or a function, but more of a word like the word management. Management requires certain specific skills that's used across the entire company. Marketing is also a set of skills that needs to be used across the company. It's maybe not quite as wide. Everybody needs to be managed. Not every person in every company is going to be doing marketing, but most will be. Most will touch marketing in some fashion, either in customer service, or of course, in sales or marketing itself, but also just in terms of, say, manufacturing. A lot of people touch the customer, even though it may only be in making sure that the quality is up to par to what it's supposed to be. So marketing needs to spread across the organization, and especially when it's small, you want everybody in your organization, to be able to hand out a card and give the elevator speech to just about anybody who might ask, because that's another channel for you, and you can't really afford a whole bunch of channels when you're small. So the skills needed are very broad, and this is kind of the reason it needs to be simplified for small companies, because you need some analytical skills, you need technical skills today. As a matter of fact, Edgar's business, which has started out as a combination of gathering information and using that information for marketing purposes, has turned into a technical thing. He has to do a lot of technical things in order to be able to maintain, the whole marketing structure. And of course, today with the internet, there's a lot of technical things that need to be done with websites, et cetera, and transactions and so forth. Third, creative. It's important to have something creative, but businesses can exist without very much creativity. As long as the product is right and the market is being satisfied, you can get along without a lot of creative. If you're not creative, when you grow a little bit, you can buy good creative. If you need a logo, you can get a logo, but you don't have to hire a marketing person. You just get an artisan, a good designer to do that for you, so you can still do it. Personality is a big part of what is needed in order to be able to do your own business, because you are the business. And so that's obviously a part of marketing. And one thing people rarely think about is project management, because there are so many different pieces to all of this. And I've just given you a few of the basics. there's so many pieces that you really have to be able to, build the plan that you need. And you're responsible for determining who your company is and what you're going to do, et cetera. And then trying to find the right people to execute it requires project management skills. Marketing people are never considered to be great project managers. But in fact, if you're running marketing, you need to be a good project manager. It's really a little bit art and a little science. It's art and science, and that's one of the reasons why nobody has all these skills. So don't try to do everything necessarily, even though I'm really kind of saying it's your responsibility. You got to do it. You have to shoulder that responsibility and find people occasionally who will fill the gaps for you. So what does the really small company do about it? Well, you are the marketing director. We've talked about that. So your job is to figure out the basics. What do you make, or what services do you provide, and that you do well? You can't. It's really hard to sell or market something that's a mediocre product. So do it really well. You need to understand what you're doing and make sure it's high quality and a great value. You need to understand positioning, marketing positioning, and marketing and placement. These two things are sort of big words for going back to knowing your customer, but it's a little bit more than that, and that is placing yourself, or your business in the place where your customers are, and then positioning in the minds that your image and a little bit of history and knowledge about your company in the mind of the customer. And that's the kind of the positioning thing. It's harder to do than that, than my quick statement there, but it's also very, very important. And again, we have several programs on positioning and on placement to help you get a sense for how to do that. This is actually something that should be done before you start your business, because if you're not really sure how you're going to position yourself, then how will you differentiate yourself? 3, stick to the knitting. Once you figure this out, small companies just have to keep doing it and doing it and doing it. Entrepreneurs that happen to be creative tend to want to go to the next project, to invent the next thing. They see opportunity around every corner. Edgar's smiling, and JP is too. So you see this opportunity, and it's like you'd like to jump to that. Maybe that's a little bit of ADD in all of us, but I think entrepreneurs probably have higher ADD profiles than regular people. Many, in fact, maybe most employees just want to know what it is that they're supposed to do. They're going to come in, they want to get it done. They want to feel good about the quality job that they have done. They want to know that, that their employer appreciates them and they're going to get a stable paycheck. Those folks tend to just, they don't tend to have the ADD that I'm talking about. It's like if you get distracted and you see opportunities everywhere, you've got to learn how to stick to the knitting and make sure it gets done, and focus then on differentiating your business from your competitors. And those are the key things, I think, for the small company until you start growing. And then as you start growing, you can start adding components to this. So finally, commit to learn each element in bite-sized pieces. Some of the frustrations that I've heard recently really have to do with, oh my gosh, now you've told me about how difficult marketing is. It sounds really time-consuming, and how am I actually going to run my business and learn how to do the marketing as well? Well, do it in bite-sized pieces. And of course, and I'm not here trying to give a pitch, but it sounds like it most so far, and that is that Microgiants has a lot of bite-sized pieces, on our YouTube channel that you can pick up and you can learn these pieces for free. So those are the basics. So remember that small businesses can make a big impact, and that's what Microgiants is all about, is to help you do that. We do have a website at microgiants.biz. If you go to YouTube, just use the keywords microgiants mentoring, and you'll be able to find some of these things that I've been talking about. So we'll stop sharing here and join the panel. Edgar, what were you smiling about when we're going through some of those basic points?
The distraction and opportunities. It's also uh, sometimes being competent in a lot of things could potentially freeze you up from moving forward. Just because you know how to do something, it doesn't mean you have to technically do it. So you have to
Yeah,
learn how to say no, or have to learn how to say yes, but not right now.
yeah,
And that's probably the hardest part when you're an entrepreneur trying to solve problems. It becomes like the biggest hurdle that I had to figure out how to
yeah.
figure it out with my clients.
Yeah, well,
Um,
focus and time management is really really important
mhm.
when you're small, when you're just getting started, because you have to do the important. You have to do everything, but you certainly have to do the important things. And so the question really is as well, if it doesn't pertain to moving my company forward, really how much time should I spend trying to do that?
And I think the urgent and important quadrant,
Hmm.
it's a tool that mentally I have it fixed in my face here almost every day. I have to kind of tell myself, is that urgent important or important but not urgent? And
Exactly.
so I think that's what made me smile off. And when you were saying that, it hit home a little bit. We're like, yeah, distractions, but I've done a lot better. Um, and the last 2 years, I think, out of the almost 5 years in business, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
That
Wow.
were the first 2 years was just the hardest probably when it came to that. And I look back now, and it was the distractions, the ability to able to fix problems that made me go left, right, left, right. And eventually, when I said,
Yeah.
"Oh, if I keep doing this, I'm gonna have to go back to get a job." When I concentrated on something and finished it, and until I don't finish, I can move on.
Right.
That's really when things start to kick off.
Yeah, and it's so easy to run out of money,
Oh yeah,
it's like, well, okay. I mean, now I don't have any choice. I got to go get that job.
yeah.
That's right. Yeah. What about the other two of you? Do you?
I'm thinking of adding on a little bit to that topic of urgent and important. In the manufacturing industry that I was involved with, which was the semiconductor and electronics industry, there were some extremely good companies at short-term, um, small-run product lines in the area of printed circuit boards or flex circuitry or development. And they had attuned their business very, very well to responding to kind of out of the box, a little bit different manufacturing things. And they did well in that. And then they started to get into the longer run manufacturing where a client said, hey, you've done really well with this in 200, 500, 1,000. Now we want to go 10,000 of these. And so they started to set up dedicated lines to run the higher runs. But there was this really pretty substantial tension that would come up with the predictability and the dependability of long run projects that had to concentrate on efficiency and quality, shipping on time. And then on the flip side of that was this client base that wanted to come in with something new and a little bit interesting, and they needed to be spun in 3 days, and they needed to have a lot of people come into it. And they actually ended up being in tension. Each part of the company, they ended up having to say, look, we need to split this company because the kind of people who are set up for the stable, long run,
Mm,
we call it slightly boring. They're a different group of folks, and we need to honor that. And then the guys who are on this short run cycle need to be a different kind of an animal. And so it's proven to be in a number of areas very similar problems. That it's very hard to do both, but the entrepreneurial end of it, the beginning end of it, you can get into a business where you actually do offer some variance to the big guys.
and
Um,
there's, we're all get flattered that somebody, especially some of these big guys, come along and go, gee, we think you could help us with this problem. It's like, oh yeah, yeah, okay, sure, yeah, we can do that. And meanwhile, that takes you down this path that you mentioned. as opposed to saying, well, that's, that's really not what we do. We do this, this is what we do. And of course, being able to deliver consistency is awfully, an awfully big part of that. Yeah.
So I did have one comment on marketing. One of the companies that comes to mind for me when I really think about how marketing perhaps was different and excellent was a company out of Indiana called Hillrom Industries, Hillenbrand. We did a lot of product with them, but it was fascinating because they did a lot of business with large large hospitals. So somebody would be coming into Hillrom to look at spending $1 million or $2 million on a whole series of hospital beds, incubators, high-tech equipment. So they would come in, Hillrom would probably bring them in their own plane, or they'd fly in, and they'd be met by a guy in kind of overalls, well-dressed, driving a nice truck or car. He'd pick them up and he'd bring them into the facility, and then he would be met by the sales professionals and all that, and all of a sudden, he'd be invited into the meeting with the presentation, and the CEO would come in, and this guy's sitting there, and he would be asked to speak about a little bit about the product and the culture, and he would, and people would go, I thought he was my bus driver. And, and then they came out and they said, well, basically what's going on? He said, well, we like to think of our relationship with you as starting at the beginning, and we will be with you the entire journey. This individual is a skilled professional in a couple of areas. One is he will transport any of your product to you. He will personally deliver them. He will personally oversee their setup. He will personally oversee all the training and the education of your staff. And then he will stay to make sure everything is fully functional. Now, further to that, ongoing, he will be your liaison and your ambassador to make sure that everything is well. So in one part, he's a transport guy, and the other part, he's an educator. That most of all, he's going to make sure you get a system that works. And that's what he did. He'd drive the 18-wheeler, or one of the many that would go out and deliver the product. And that, I'm telling the story now 30 years later than when they initiated this, because they had the highest retention rate in sales for hospital. They expanded their product line, and part of their marketing deal was they're not selling product, they're selling a relationship. And they actually did that. So people stayed. They might have gone with them because they had a good product at a reasonable price. Although I don't think they're ever a price leader in terms of low price, but they stayed with them because no matter what happened, they solved the problem.
Wow.
So
I wish some of the hospitals would learn to do that for those of us who are patients.
Yeah, well, that's a different problem.
Yes, it is.
So from a marketing point of view, there was a subtlety in the way Hillrom or Hillenbrand Industries said that we're going to go to market and we want to stay. Our clients, we want to keep. We want to get the right clients for the right reasons, and we want to keep them.
Yeah.
So.
Right. JP, you're on mute still.
Absolutely. Didn't want anyone to hear the rock concert going on while I was listening to my fellow panelists.
Okay.
But this topic has struck me on several different notes, to continue the metaphor, of things that have been happening recently for me, both sort of within OCB and without it. And
OCB is your company name.
That's right, Old California Botanicals.
Right.
And I've started to dabble in this a bit more, and I'm contemplating this because I think the big problem I had is, I went through a conventional MBA program with Georgetown, full-time, Washington, D.C., and they had disciplines, sort of a core curriculum that everyone was supposed to take. Marketing was one of those core curricula. Of course, at that point in time, I was approaching it very much from, the traditional finance, investments, hardo sort of direction, and it wasn't really on my radar. And of course, I was in classes and did what I had to do to get through it. And the thing that struck me very much about this is that the marketing curriculum that I received was very much sort of written of, by, and for big corporates.
Yes.
And so that impacted the attitude by which I approached the curriculum. It was very data heavy. And I kind of developed the impression that, unless I had access to these big data sets, I wasn't really going to be able to do any of this. And so, recruiting being what it is, you focus on other things. So now here I am, volunteering for some local nonprofits. And I was posed sort of a business question. We have a roster of members, and we have their addresses. And it's sort of a large geographical area across Southern California. What's a good central location in terms of drive time for this group, at least of likely attendees for these events, to meet? And typically there's a general idea of where sort of the clusters of members are, and they're diffuse. It's split between Los Angeles and San Diego. And there's others in Orange County, the Inland Empire, and even up in Ventura. So, it covers quite a long distance. To drive across this geography would be, 4 hours. It's more than you would want, to go for a lunch lecture. So I started to chat with ChatGPT. How would I figure out the answer to this? Because Google Maps doesn't exactly have that as part of its competency, and I have like 70 names I'm dealing with here. So to my great surprise, that door from marketing class opened itself to me. And I find myself wishing I had been paying attention a lot, more closely. And it's something I'm continuing to sort of explore. It seems that ChatGPT has sort of democratized access to these data sets, and I'm still sort of fathoming how far this goes, to small business people or people who direct small organizations, whether they're for or not for profit. And suffice it to say, I did manage to actually come to an answer. I was able to tell ChatGPT. I mean, you have to be specific with the prompts and everything. So that's one skill set. Is it's a different type of management at that point in time, but you have to be specific. So I'm looking for the lowest average drive time for this data set, and I gave it zip codes from off the roster because honestly, who wanted to sit there and enter in the whole address? And it actually gave me an answer. It told me, okay, well, at the very least, your average drive time is 75 minutes. And there are 31 people who will have this drive time or less. And so now we're able to think differently as an organization of where we should be meeting, how should we be talking with the event venue as in terms of like, say, our average attendance rate, and where we should be searching for venues. And so instead of, the problem is for a small organization, so much of what you do at a small scale, once you begin to grow, becomes boiling the ocean. I think entrepreneurs start out at the very beginning with a very attuned notion of what they're selling and to whom, but the second that you actually start to try to grow large enough to the point that you can sustain part-time or full-time staff, which is basically kind of where I am right now with OCB, you need to expand your footprint into territory that you don't exactly have personal relationships. Well, so how do you find those people that you actually can, that would actually be predisposed to forming those business relationships with you, and how do you engage them? So so what ChatGPT did is it gave me the prompts. It told me the platform. Google has a data analysis cloud computing platform that I used, and I had to sign up for an account. It was free. And it's a freemium model, it seems, that, after a certain amount of usage, which I didn't hit, and I sat there toying with the thing for a couple hours. And then there is a platform that Google also has for Python coding. And so ChatGPT was able to give me the Python code. Basically, I told it what I was trying to do, and it wrote the code for me. There were errors, and so it became sort of an iteration process. And the platform for the coding would tell me, okay, there's an error in this line. I would go back to ChatGPT, give them the feedback. They say, okay, well, here's the mistake, and here we fixed it. And so after about an hour of work, I actually managed to get results that made sense. Like we'd worked out the bugs, and I'd reviewed the answers and figured out that if it was telling me that the average drive time was 4 days, that maybe there was something wrong with the code. So, I mean, you have to be able to think critically about what you're getting. But there is a point where reasonability is attainable, and you kind of have to be paying attention for that. But now I find myself wondering if there are other ways I might be able to explore psychographic data for my customer base using this as sort of a method. Because actually, honestly, I've had several conversations with ChatGPT about this, and it actually was able to give me a general marketing profile that was fairly descriptive of people I already kind of understood, maybe implicitly, were my target retail customers. And it was able to talk about habits, behaviors, other preferences, things like that. So, I encourage you to sort of toy around with that if you're looking at marketing, because let's be honest, I went on to Upwork and looked for people to do this for me, and it's a couple $1,000 before they get out of bed, and that's just not in my budget. So, I mean, there are ways that you can sort of begin to build this out, of course, understanding that it's sort of the GIGO principle. You have to be paying attention to see if these results make sense, but ChatGPT can sort of walk you step by step through the process. And so now I'm finding myself wondering if I'm able to identify other zip codes and build sort of a more data-driven approach to sales for OCB, so that I can actually sort of refine where it is I'm looking for wholesale relationships, and how it is I can sharpen and refine my messaging, say on social media. I have been finding greater success with my social on sort of different informational matters. I mean, think of me as a slightly more long-winded Snapple lid. And I'm trying to work on getting, conversion to my website. But all of these are data sets here. And so I'm thinking, that's sort of where my thinking is. And I'm coming to appreciate that the more and more I want to grow, and the further along I get with OCB, the more and more important that marketing skill set ultimately becomes. And so I guess maybe one thing is, like, if you are small, don't exactly tune it out right now, because it doesn't apply to you immediately, because it will come in handy eventually. And there might be opportunities that manifest themselves down the road where you're going to wish you had it in your toolbox.
Good advice. I've done a lot of queries with ChatGPT as well, and a couple of other AIs, and I have found them to be pretty well versed on marketing. Not so well for very, very small companies, because it doesn't know how to skip the steps. It doesn't know how to boil it down and boil it down and boil it down, and so yeah. But I would encourage people to do that. I don't know how many entrepreneurs will really feel comfortable doing it. It may not be very many, at least right now. It's going to come, but I definitely endorse trying it. What you described is the number one principle that we talked about, and that is get to know more about your customers. And so what you did is you did an exercise of sort of, a sub chapter of, okay, well, one of the things we need to do is we need to understand how this location of our customers changes the way that we do business. Of course, it's a nonprofit, so you might not have said you're going to limit your membership to a geographic area. But if, in fact, you were the long-term membership really correlated with being at meetings, and that's what people really joined for, you may well find that having a large geography is just not going to work naturally. And therefore, you need to focus on bringing that geography in and finding more members in a smaller geography.
Absolutely.
That normally happens. That happens kind of normally anyway. But if you do it with intention, then you can spend a little bit more time trying to find out the column elements of your customers, and then you can, or your, in this case, members, and then you can narrow that down and use tools like ChatGPT to learn more. You can also go to companies like USA Today. I think that's called Axios now. They changed the name. You can still find it if you go to not USA Today, USA Data. And I found that to be very helpful and very inexpensive. You can use the marketing tool set to do counts and be able to determine how many people are there by zip code and a variety of things. If you do need the addresses, you have to pay for them. But if you get your counts down to a very small number, we should probably do a program on how to do that because it's very valuable. You get your counts down, you can afford to buy these for a few bucks, you know, $50, $100, $200. It's not terribly expensive when you have a small company, and it's a good way to get started. And those are those are parts of the tools, not ChatGPT, but those are part of the tools that I had to learn in order to help clients who are so small that they just didn't have resources. Of course, I did it for them most of the time, and was able to, because my frustration working with small clients has always been, like you in business school, I learned big marketing. I didn't learn little marketing, and but I had little businesses, so I had to learn how to do that on my own. And so I ended up doing all the things that I talk about, you know, that I just talked about myself. I do have some creative abilities, so I was able to, as Edgar does, so I was able to skip some of the buying out of certain creative elements. You know, I went through all of those pieces, but trying to figure out how to do traditional marketing has always been very difficult for small companies. That said, this traditional is really changing for the reasons that you just explained. and Edgar has been quite involved in the online side of it, you know, on behalf of his clients, and he's done an awful lot of this digging like you have.
If I were to talk about my personal business, there's not much to say. It will be kind of boring conversation, right? If we talk about my marketing strategies, but it's about my clients' marketing strategies of what we're doing to fix their problems. That's
Right.
what makes my conversation a little bit more potentially resonate with the small business. We're dealing with two clients that we can go ahead and Ron defined perfectly what you said is their sons, their advisors, people around them are trying to teach them big marketing. They learned it from going to universities, college, stuff like that. But when they try to apply it to the small business, the entrepreneur kind of just pushes it off and says, that's not for me. Whether they don't understand it, or might be that like, if I start doing that, I'm going to lose more money trying to put the systems in place than actually just going out there and getting my clients myself the way I know how to get it. I'm dealing with a new client that decided to expand exponentially into Santa Ana and Long Beach all at the same time after barely opening his restaurant in Bloomington. And he just he will never do anything traditional. Just like he'll do things that will pretty much be other people will say, like, what are you doing? So what I've learned to do is like, okay, you did it, you saw something someone else didn't do, so now I need to support you with your decisions.
Yeah.
And so now we're here. Now we're in Santa Ana, a completely different market, and now we need to figure out how to get your restaurant just as full as Bloomington restaurant, all right? And so where are we coming? We sit down, we have these round table ideas. And it's like, okay, we see those apartments across the street. Let's, like, for him, he's not going to wait for analytics. He's just going to go ahead and print a bunch of flyers and get somebody to go pass it first. I was like, okay, let's get that going. You get it going.
Yeah.
Next round, we are going to figure out like more of the traditional, the more advanced marketing. We're already in gift cards, putting QR codes on them and putting the menu on the gift card and the QR code, loading $5 in each of these gift cards. That's where the POS system comes into hand. And then we're going to go into every single major building, office, department. So we're just going to give them a $5 gift card to come and try our food because they never heard of the Viejo and Mariscos Sushi in San Juan. It's a prime location, but it doesn't mean you're going to make money if you don't have the ability to bring your clients in. And this is a previously failed restaurant that was looking, I don't want to say failed, but it's a previous restaurant that wasn't doing too well that he bought, took over and rebranded under Viejo. And so that's an example of like the small guy. We tried doing the traditional marketing, the big marketing stuff, but we just kind of took it down to the more basic stuff. It's like, all right, we need to get out there, build this place first, and then we'll go ahead and put the measurement into place. We'll go ahead and and an advisor of him was also telling them, it's like, okay, your number one priority is to have systems in place, right? And it's like, okay. For him is like, if I do that, I'll go broke. Like by the time I finish putting my systems in place, my restaurant will be shut down. So my priority is to fill my restaurant full of people, however I can. It doesn't matter where they came from. I don't care as long as they keep showing down the door. And then later I'll go and figure it out where they came from. The measurement tools, like where they're at. Like I just need to get out there, try as many things as I can, get this place to a place where it can pay itself, and then I'll figure out where they came from. And so it's a fun conversation to have with that guy. Because he has a lot of professionals around him, but at the end of it all, he knows what he did, and we just need to figure it out, kind of like how to support him. And the other client is tools. The economy was doing great during the pandemic. There was a lot of money to be spent, and right now there's not that many people that bought tools from him, expensive tools, coming back and trying to see if he will buy them back. And so he's in a situation where it's like, Edgar, just when he first met me, he was selling tools in the swap meet. Now he has a big old warehouse in San Bernardino, and now we're in the stage of what we're gonna do. And he says, Edgar, I need help from you. I need to become an online store that can deliver. I need to become a warehouse. What can you do for me? And so I was like, if I'm gonna deviate away from restaurants for you because he's my top client, for longest client I've ever have had. So what we're doing is building a online Shopify website that they could do delivery and pick up on site, just like a big retailer. And it wasn't as difficult as that was going to be. And we are also trying to implement every integration we can think of, like Uber. Uber has this package delivery setting on it. It was kind of cool. So we have building relationships with people that are working on site. That we could use Uber to deliver the tools straight to their on-site location. So we're realizing that
a hammer and a wrench at the same time,
as quickly as we can, because
there you go.
So he's agreed with me, and I agree with him that just like back in the day, that what was going to separate him from the Swami between everyone else is to do things legitimate and start charging credit cards, because cash is going to disappear. Right? At the Swami place, everything's cash. Nobody wants to pay sales tax and whatnot, but he had to do the right thing, and he did, and he grew exponentially. He's the reason that the business grew exponentially. I just kind of give him a couple of tools. And now we're in a place where this true entrepreneur, like massive entrepreneur, sees the vision, doesn't know how to acquire it. We use tools, people like myself that can help him put the tools in front of him, and I want to see how far he can go. So small businesses, marketing strategies like the big corporations, it's difficult to follow. Often I think I've learned more from my clients than what I've learned from what I studied or what I go, because they teach me so much more than I realize that maybe sometimes I think I'm not an entrepreneur. I was an entrepreneur, what do you call it? Helper, more than anything else. That's who I am. And because I see what they do and the risk they take, it doesn't even match to the risk that I've ever taken. And so this is the reason why I think small businesses have that gap of like trying to learn the marketing aspect of things. If you're a small business, what you need to do is have a balance, though. I believe it's necessary to eventually use, and now, like you said, Ron, and I don't want to rumble forever, so I'll stop here, but I believe that we're in a very unique era that I saw in the last 5 years evolve, where a tiny little business could potentially have the tools that a big business has at a very affordable cost. And the need now is become people that knows how to teach them how to use those tools or help them implement it. I think that's where it's becoming, you could have an enterprise level system without having to spend the enterprise level money for a small business. And we're going to have a batch of brand new entrepreneurs, I believe, that a new Elon Musk, like just say, like joking around, but a new batch of new entrepreneurs that otherwise it wasn't for the technology available today, these guys probably would never even exist.
Right.
So
Right. Well, I think you're onto something there. I've been doing this as a consultant for well over 30 years now, and I've always felt like, well, the computer comes along and we do something with that. The internet comes along, we do something with that. So what's happening is that these tools are becoming more available for smaller and smaller people. And I don't have any doubt that with chat and the adoption of some of these companies that provide information and tools and analysis of AI, that the smaller company is going to have an opportunity to have finally, JP, the serious analytical ability that the big guys had. And so, if you could just do it in a flash and say, well, we know who your customers are in your current restaurant, and we understand the profile of that, and then you could simply, use a program or AI or whatever and say, okay, now contrast and compare this area with the new area in Santa Ana. And then you could come up with insights that you never would have thought of. And so while I respect many of these entrepreneurs that are successful and they tend to be able to smell a market, and I acknowledge it that those people exist. You just smell it and it's there and they do it. That's fine. And then there are also those that can make some mistakes and then gut through it anyway and still figure out how to get it done. Nonetheless, opening a new store because it was a good deal is still like throwing mud on the wall. Some will stick and some will not. And I guarantee that if he throws enough mud on the wall, he will have more failures than he has successes. So if he's successful in these, say, 2 stores, that would be going against a normal growth curve to the tune of being in, say, 2 standard deviations away from norm. In other words, it hardly ever happens. So he's got maybe, I don't know, what's 3 standard deviations, JP, 12.5% or something like that? Or a very small percentage opportunity to succeed. The more he does, the bigger of a problem he's going to have. So hopefully you'll be able to bring him alongside him and start giving him some of this data so that he can see some of these, mistakes he's made, assumptions he's made, make some corrections before he ends up, really failing in such a big way.
And can I add something real quick before I forget? But the exciting part for me is I have a client that chose me basically to be part of that journey of trying to figure out how to acquire that data.
Great. That's great.
And that's where I'm excited because I feel like never before I've seen the opportunity for me to find a way to provide data that is I've never seen available for a small business guy.
Yeah, no,
at a cost that I started to look at this, and this is becoming very doable to even have robotics and analog measurement devices providing feedback from the restaurant. It's becoming that much more close for me to do it. And eventually, a couple of years from now, hopefully, I have a conversation where I don't say it's possible, but it's been done.
Yeah,
and that's the goal, to provide that data for these great entrepreneurs that they don't get blindsided. Like I said, they're great at throwing mud at the wall. They're also great at trying using their entire will and energy and everything they got to keep the mud on the wall, even if it was not supposed to stay.
But once you're at a certain scale, that's just because you can doesn't mean you should. It's about efficiency at the end of the day. And if you're throwing enough mud at the wall, whether it sticks or not, you're still cleaning up a mess.
I've met people that can put a drill on a wall with the drill in reverse and they'll successfully make it go through because of pure force.
You know what? I've done that before. The problem is it only took 5 times longer than if I had it going the right way.
I mean, but it is amazing how that does change the management game for businesses, because you know, I have a friend who has a restaurant, and for whatever reason my mind keeps going back to like a restaurant use case here. But I mean, understanding the psychographic data of where your business is located can help you set ideal hours, knowing exactly when and how many people are on the street, or which days of the week, how many people to staff in the location during certain times of the day. And I mean, that's saving other resources for you to continue to grow elsewhere. And I mean, instead of sort of boiling the ocean and keeping sort of standard hours at a particular location, or staffing in certain ways, that's inefficiencies that larger businesses are smart about. So it's about informed management at the end of the day.
Those kinds of things can maximize you know, your business. One little teeny thing, as you mentioned, is that if you could, if a restaurant owner could utilize that information to turn the volume of the music up and down appropriately, they would increase the use, or they increase the repeat business for certain customers, because certain customers want to, you know, business people want to have a conversation. They don't want loud music, say, during lunch. Old people like John and I have a little bit tougher time hearing. And the interesting thing is that we get to the point to where we simply eliminate a large swath of restaurants from consideration.
It's because of music.
Just because of the sound of music.
And this is funny, because part of the thing that I'm trying to help them with is have full control of the music, because we're using technology instead of old systems. I use Sonos. That's a great connect. So I connect old systems to Sonos.
Right.
Part of it, I have a control where volume cannot go any higher than a certain amount.
Yeah.
So I did that personally at the Santa Ana location, because it's near a convention center. So I don't want the music to ever become an issue where we lose clients, because the guy that controls the iPad becomes obsessed with his song, and he blasted it the day when the guy, the day Ron Burgess came to eat.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Right. And then he never comes back. And
John and I used to get together at a specific, you know, pub.
Here's an idea that I had that I've been working with, is to put actual noise, what do you call it?
Abatement.
Sensors through Arduino. Use Arduino Cloud, bring it right back to my dashboard, and find out if the decibels are louder than it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Have the ability to lower the music automatically if the music is louder than it's supposed to be. It's not joking, but it is things like that I have on my to-do list.
Yeah, so it's interesting as you talk about today. I want to bring up Home Depot for you for a moment. And I spent, I don't know, for a period of time, I spent $20,000 to $30,000 a month with Home Depot. And I still spend a lot of money, not quite that. But recently I've been going on there, and you get in there in the morning, and there is this absolutely hard rock Metallica yelling in the background. Now, some people like it, but I'm trying to go and concentrate on what to buy. And I've got this going on in the background. And I'm like, I went up and I said, guys, what is going on? I mean, I really want to leave. I don't want to be here in the building, period, let alone come back and try to go and buy something. This is, and the person in customer service says, well, we took a vote and we adopted that anybody who's an employee can submit songs that need to be, that they want to listen to during the workday. And it's a democratic system. So whatever comes up, comes up. And I'm like, wow, these guys have lost it. Their client has turned into their employees.
And if they didn't have a monopoly, they would be hurting. If real competition.
They've forgotten their real client, who is the guys that come in and spend money on them.
And I could go on and on about Home Depot. They make so many mistakes. It's really ridiculous.
Well, what's interesting on that, just as a quick sideline, when I came out here from the Midwest in 2000, Lowe's didn't exist out here, and Home Depot didn't exist out here. Home Depot came out, and they really just thrived. I mean, they really did well. Local hardware stores all went out of business. We used to have a Carlson's here locally. All the local guys went, and now you got Home Depot. Then Lowe's came in, and everybody said, well, Lowe's isn't going to make it. Home Depot's got it figured out. Well, I'll tell you what, Right now, you can go to Lowe's and you can get a commercial grade selection of product. You go to Home Depot and you get the fast sellers. Anything that's not a fast seller, they don't have. And I wheel in plumbing and air conditioning, those kind of things. You can get all the basics, but you don't get anything that goes with the basics. It's all available online. So my attitude is, hey, if it's available online, I'll get it all online. And so that's what we're doing. But you can go to Lowe's and actually get a good selection. So Lowe's is coming in through the back door with, by the way, calm music, and and they're winning. And I like Home Depot, but they're losing out bad.
Well,
The customer is.
Home Depot will invite you to go online and buy it. And I'll just say, thank you very much, I will. But I won't buy it from you. I'll buy it from Amazon.
Oh, yeah, because with Amazon, I get delivered and I can send it back.
It's delivered for free. I can send it back. It shows up faster. Home Depot does not have the mechanics to be able to do that properly. They have not figured out how to do the pickup thing that works. You know, I've tried it 3 or 4 or 5 times. I've only gotten it to work one time. You have to walk in and you have to inquire where it is. They simply haven't figured out how to do it.
So I would say, Ron, that their marketing people have lost the edge. Their accounting people have taken over the company. They're looking to maximize turn ratios and maximize profit, and they're missing out on the client, what we need to be successful in dealing with them.
I agree.
And they're not giving me what I need to be successful in.
It's a typical CFO myopia. And I've run into it so many times with clients over the years where, you know, and I appreciate efficiency. I appreciate good return on investment. I get all of that stuff. But, you know, if you drive your customers away, if you sooner or later, enough of them leave so that your efficiency begins to drop because you lost your overall volume. And so your fixed expenses are not getting paid for anymore in the same way. You can actually drive yourself out of business trying to optimize. So,
and imagine my client, the one behind, that's exactly what he said. It was like, I exactly how you said it, which is kind of nice to hear from you guys, because like, yeah, if I let the accounting take over, then, but eventually he's like, we need help with the accounting from beginning with, but it is one of those things.
We want to measure stuff, but you need to use that measurement, you know, not only for financial, but for marketing too. It's all important for marketing. So, well, this has been a really great discussion, guys. And I didn't expect us to quite go down this path, but I think it ended up way more interesting as a result. So I think we'll probably need to start focusing on doing some of these very specific things. And JP, maybe we'll have you give us a lesson on Chat GPT for finding data. You know, that would be
Ron,
fun.
if I may suggest, I would really love you to expound, or us to expound on, you know, you said know your customer, to understand your customer. And I think one of my businesses was turned around by understanding my customer in a different way than I thought I knew them. I thought I knew my customer, and I did. I knew them by name. I knew what they did. I knew a lot about them, but I didn't know why my customers were my customers. And you helped me with that through Micro Giants. And I think that would be a really, how does a small company understand the customer? It's not an easy question.
No, it's not.
And I actually, if you remember, I actually told you that you were full of it and I didn't like it.
I think I recall that.
Yeah, I do. And then on top of that, I said, well, okay, you tell me who my customer is. And then you came back and said, I can't. I'm like, okay, you're telling me I don't know my customer, and you're telling me you can't tell me who. So what am I going to do? And that's another episode.
That's another episode. Yes, that's right. How did we do that? Okay.
What it's worth for me, I'd love to maybe explore psychographic data a little bit more.
Sure.
You know, particularly in a way that it might be accessible to small businesses. I know that there are some organizations here in town who have data on State Street and know what days are the highest traffic days and how much traffic hits the area over the course of a year. And I feel like that's, you know, important information for small businesses when they're picking locations or when they're optimizing operations in certain locations, and perhaps they've not looked it over. I know real estate agents seem to be able to get access to this, but I just really don't know much about it.
Yeah, that whole location analysis is probably I mean, other than knowing your customers, location analysis is probably number 2 in picking a new store or restaurant location. And you're right. There's a lot of information to help on that stuff, and that would be a good exploration. So, all right. Well, we have plenty of new things to say. Glad you were all here. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Excellent.
You guys